All right. So our moderator tonight is Mani Farhadi, herself a product of an alternative career path. As a thought leader, Mani's experience spans 35 years. Currently, as senior facilities planner at Stanford University School of Medicine, Mani combines her passion for education with planning skills to develop design ideas and solutions for research space. Mani's volunteer leadership roles include WIA mentor, co-founder of BB, Banus in Building Industry for Iranian American Women, DEI officer for Wellesley College alumni class, former board trustee, Los Gatos Union School District, and chair of Bond Oversight Committee, receiving Citizen Architect Award. She has served as moderator, juror, panelist, speaker, and docent at Learning by Design, SF Design Week, SCUP, Equity by Design, WLS, AIA, CCFC, and SPUR, with topics ranging from career building to inclusivity and intersectionality. She is a graduate of Wellesley College, BA Architecture, and Boston Architectural College. Wow.
Thank you, Terry. We can advance the slides. And these are our learning objectives. Are you going to read the learning objectives?
Oh, listen. Okay, sorry. So learning objectives, learn about alternate career paths in the industry through professional experience of a diverse set of panelists as an example. Understand the importance of learning, adaptability, and diversity of roles in a professional context. Emphasize the importance of sharing resources among robust network of industry professionals. Share key strategies for sustainable growth of diverse roles within the profession.
Hope to get through all that. Thank you, Sherry. I'm really excited to be here. One thing you'll note is you had index cards. So as we are talking and you come up with a question, that's what the purpose of those cards is. So make sure you jot down your question and we hope to get to it. At the end, we'll maybe collect them. You can also raise your hand, but that was kind of the...
Okay. Do you need these or does everyone hear fine?
Can everyone hear? Should we speak a little louder? Louder? All right, let's speak a little louder.
We have these if you want.
Yeah, why not?
Maybe on.
Is it on?
Zoom, it might be.
Oh, it might be harder to hear on Zoom. Is that better? Is that better? No, I don't think it's making a difference. Well, I think they're gonna go get Rick and see if we can. All right. So what I'm gonna do first is introduce briefly our panelists. And then what we're gonna do is each panelist will have 5 minutes approximately to tell you their story of why they have chosen an alternative career path. Once all of us speak for about 5 minutes and share our story and you know, you come up with questions, then we're going to have some pre-planned questions that we've already agreed to with our panelists, but we also do want to make sure that we leave enough time for you all. So first I'm going to, I have to introduce the panelists. Thank you. Liz Gibbons, friend or pal of buddy of mine. She's been my personal friend for almost 20 years. She and I worked together at Steinberg Park for 10 years. She was my manager and our friendship has survived the working relationship. We also have the Boston area in common as she graduated from Newton College of Sacred Art with a bachelor's in fine art and art history, followed by an architecture certificate from the Boston Architectural College. And as you know from Sherry saying, I also went to Boston Architectural College, so we also have that in common. And then she went on to get a master's in architecture from University of Oregon. Her illustrious career includes nearly 40 years as a licensed architect, which is impressive. Working at both large firms and small firms, as well as having her own consulting practice and volunteering for the AIA, such as she was our president in 2009, the AIA Silicon Valley president, as well as serving on AI Strategic Council. and she'll tell you a lot more about that. So my part here is just to give the brief highlights. Her passion has been advocating for her community, and she'll tell you more about her journey and how her volunteering has led to life in politics. Moving on to Cal. Cal and I just met as we were preparing for this panel. Didn't know each other before. She was introduced to us by Letitia. Thank you. Cal received a Bachelor of Architecture from Tamkang University at Taiwan, and she began working in fabrication, then followed it up with a master's in architecture from California College of the Arts. She worked for about a year as an architectural designer before working in a fab lab, and I guess that is what convinced her to switch to fabrication side. She's at One Hat, One Hand, a custom design and fabrication shop in San Francisco. We will hear more from Cal about what drew her to shifting away from architecture into fabrication. Next, we have Haley Soderlund-Mako. She and I also met as we were preparing for this panel. She was introduced to us by Stephanie Silkwood. Thank you, Stephanie. Haley received her BS in architectural engineering from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. After college, Haley began working as a project engineer at Excel and rising to project manager before moving on to GCI, our sponsors this evening. There she began as a project manager and has been there 10 years, where she's currently project executive. Haley will tell us more about what made her want to switch into working in construction. And we have Letitia Suhu. She and I met a few years ago through WIA as part of planning the AI conferences. Letitia has a master's in architecture from SciArc. In her 20-year career, she has had a variety of experience, worked in design at architectural firms, in sustainability at engineering firms. She has had her own practice with a green building strategy, and she taught at the Academy of Art University. She's been a mentor, an active volunteer, and a board member for AIA. She's currently a senior construction project manager at CBRE at Google, and she will share further about her choices and why she's no longer in a traditional, what we call architectural practice. So that is our panel. But guess what? You are also part of our panel. I have a few questions for you already. Raise your hands. How many of you have been working for 10 years in your profession? And that's pretty much a group. How many have been working 20 years or more? Okay. How many have been working 30 years or more? If they want to admit. Okay. How many have been working 40 years or more? And how many have been working 50 years or more? Or want to admit it? Won't admit it. All right. So here's a question. How many of you are practicing in a non-traditional role currently, meaning you're not working in an architectural office currently? All of us on the panel, and some of you, very good. But how many, here's the key question, are looking to change into an alternative career path based on what you hear today? Maybe. Anyone planning a switch? Maybe. Okay. Awesome.
Are we gonna ask again after?
We'll see if you change your mind after we tell you how much fun we are having. All right. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. You can pick this one. All right. So I should know my own story. All right. So I'm going to tell you, we're going to spend 5 minutes, each of us, going down the line before we get to our Q&A. And this is sort of to paint a picture for you about our career choices and how we got to where we are. So all the way back when I was born in the US, third generation Iranian American, and then we did a reverse migration and our family moved to Iran. My father is architect Nader Ardalan, renowned architect, and my late mother Lale Bakhtiar is a renowned author. I even attended the International Congress of Women Architects in Iran. It was held in 1976 with architects from around the world. The former queen of Iran had studied architecture in Paris before she married the king. And so she organized and sponsored the conference, and architects were flown in from around the world. The Congress is what inspired me to become an architect based on what I heard and saw there with the women from around the world who wanted to change the world with architecture. I always loved education from elementary school to high school. I know I'm one of the only people who say I loved high school. Most people don't say that. I ended up being class valedictorian, class president, yearbook editor, all that despite the fact my parents were divorced, which no one in Iran had divorced parents at the time. And we were going through the Islamic Revolution in my late years in high school. So despite all that, I managed to find ways to survive and thrive. I came to the US in 1980 after I graduated high school. I was already a US citizen. There was a lot of anti-Iranian sentiments in the US at the time due to the revolution and the hostages. That's a story for another day, but I do want to give a shout out to the Iranian women. They are currently fighting against tyranny, and so shout out to our sister. We do have 4 Iranian American architects here today. We have Shadi, Sherry, Sefi, and myself. And it's also Women's History Month, so I thought it was very appropriate to at least mention them. So the movement is called Women, Life, Freedom. Be happy to talk to you about it another time. So once I graduated college, I worked for 30 years. I worked at Sasaki Associates in Boston, Steinberg Hart in San Jose, and Taylor Design in San Francisco. Primarily, my projects were education-based, K-12, public, private, community college, 4-year institutions, and graduate schools. And to me, a campus is a mini city. There are so many building types you find: a library, dormitories, classrooms, gym, cafeteria, parking garage, admin offices, student services, everything. All the way from renovations all the way to master plans, and sort of helping them plan their future. All this was led by my love for learning, which began early. And I used to be called a client in the room when I was working in the architectural firm. As I moved up the ladder, certainly attended a lot of conferences and made presentations, but at the same time, I volunteered in my kids' schools. So I volunteered on the local bond oversight committee for 10 years. That's when I got my Citizen Architect Award, and I got to meet Mary when her firm, HNC, was doing the schools for our kids. And I was then appointed Board of Trustees, which was really an eye-opener. I think that's when I really saw life from on the other side. As a Board of Trustee member, I loved representing my community's voice as a parent, and in an environment they had helped raise my kids, and I was giving back to the environment. And I would even enjoy talking to people who approached me at the grocery store or would message me, or friends on social, would ask me, what's going on with the school board? I actually enjoyed that part of it. So when people ask me, what do you build? I build consensus. When the opportunity presented itself to apply for senior planner position at Stanford University, I eagerly took it because all these years I was on the other side as a consultant being hired by, the institutions. And so I really wanted to see how things were. And so, boy, yes, now I know decisions are made, why they change their mind, why it takes so long, and I'd be happy to share any of that insight with you. And I thought I knew after 30 years of being on the other side, but it's nothing like being on the inside, where I've been now about 5 years at Stanford. So for me, right now, I have access not only to AIA and architecture world, but also to the world of Stanford. All the webinars, career development, training. I did a supervisor academy. I did a leadership training with the senior associate dean. On Friday, they had a women's leadership summit. There were 300 women from Stanford at the leadership summit there. And so those are great opportunities. And it reminded me of our women's leadership summit with 750 women architects from around the world, which we held in San Jose last September. So lastly, I'll just wrap up to say that I'm contributing not only to my own learning journey, but I'm also exposing those that I meet at university level to women architects and planners, to professional Iranian American women. And so my world has expanded, and I also expand the world of the people that I meet. It's increasing awareness of women, Iranian Americans, and how we can contribute our thought to the process. So I'm really excited to be pursuing this path in education, and I can be an advocate and a voice for many in my community. So what I'll just say is that about 40 to 50% of architecture students are women, but only about 20% are licensed architects are women. So where are they? What are they doing? Well, some of us are here, and you'll see why it is that we're not necessarily in traditional practice. Maybe they're working in interiors. Maybe they're working for furniture vendors. Maybe they're working in construction. Maybe they're teaching. Maybe they're volunteering. Maybe they're finding a life that gives them more balance. So we're going to unpack that with our speakers and find out why they've chosen their paths. And we'll start with Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Great story. So, hello, everyone. It's really nice to reconnect with people and meet all the new people. Thanks for being here, and those of you online, thank you. While preparing for this evening's conversation, it occurred to me that my current resume doesn't really tell the story of what I do and what my training in architecture got me into politics and all the variety of things I've done over the intervening years. So what describes my career? Recognizing opportunities that use what I love to do. I think that's true of all of us. Recognizing opportunities that use what I love to do. For me, it begins with loving math and puzzles. I think around corners. I'm sure you've all heard that before. I always wanted to be an architect. What could be a greater way of solving puzzles than building buildings? Architecture training taught me many skills that are broadly applicable. So here's the story of what went on and what is still going on. There's a fairly consistent pattern with a lot of opportunities for zigs and zags along the way that ultimately led me to becoming an elected official. Decision-making resulting from listening, considering, and learning. After I finished my undergraduate degree, I went to the Boston Architectural Center. Everyone worked during the day and studied at night. The most important design lesson I learned during that BAC time was to suspend judgment, think laterally. My day job was building prefabricated modular homes. I have to remember, this is in the 70s. It was a big deal in the 70s. And all the pieces had to fit together. See the puzzles in there? For my master's degree, I studied under a professor who was both an architect and a structural engineer. I was an assistant to Ed Masria in his climate studies organization. My thesis was on the adaptive reuse of a historical office building in Boston. The focus was documenting the decision-making process, assessment, design, implementation, and finance. From there, a job in San Francisco included working with Charles Ely, developing the first energy conservation design manual for SFO, the ever-changing SFO. In 1982, I joined a multiple disciplinary firm, I'll get there, Parsons, Brinkerhoff, Quaid, and Douglas. I could lean over the petition to listen and learn about any discipline: mechanical, electrical, civil, structural, geotechnical, transportation. It was great. The responsibilities I had included competitions, client negotiations, entitlements, funding, design, implementation, and construction administration. My knowledge and respect for all disciplines was solidified. I loved even the weird projects. One was the Glenwood Canyon portals in Colorado. The topography made a typical flat design of a portal very expensive. So we worked with a structural engineer to extend the curved tunnel envelope asymmetrically while working with a design artist to have the first concrete retaining wall to simulate the geotechnical rock formation. Crazy, but that's what we did. Starting with BART stations, the PDQ team found an opportunity to design a dragon profile platform cover. not the flat ones you see a lot of, an articulated cover, stimulating for the environment, even if you're driving by in a car. I worked on the light rail systems, beginning with the Guadalupe light rail. I was asked to provide design criteria for the integration of the platform components such as catenary poles, pedestrian access, and handicapped access. This is where I learned that politicians don't always take excellent advice. In 1990, I joined the City of Campbell Redevelopment Agency. The project was to create a place, real downtown. Campbell started out with railroad tracks, canneries, and banks. The community wanted and needed a physical center. The community needed more than technical expertise. It became the Downtown Streetscape Project. The project was scope, schedule, budget, requiring communication skills, interdisciplinary knowledge, field experience, and decision-making. Most critically, an awareness of the needs of the businesses before, during, and after construction. This is when my connection with the community of Campbell really blossomed, i.e. the Valley of Heart's Delight. Subsequently, I was appointed to the Planning Commission. After politics and poor economy closed the redevelopment agency in the early 1990s, I moved on to Applied Materials as the owner's rep. They produce the machines that make the discs for the chips. Space and environmental concerns, specifically water, were a big deal. Again, puzzles that benefited from interdisciplinary knowledge and decision-making. The machines needed to be designed to take as little a footprint as possible. The machines were designed with origami parts. It's fantastic. And with the technology changing, demands were always changing. So I was asked to write manuals for new manufacturing facilities to help the board make decisions. From 2003 to 2012, I was a program manager at Steinberg Architects, coordinating multiple school buildings remodels in different architectural projects with my friend, pal, buddy, mine, many stories. Master planning for community college districts came next. What buildings stay, what buildings go. Curriculum demanding different program spaces, seismic safety, pedestrian and vehicular circulation, open space, and funding. Always considering, listening, learning, ultimately for decision making. In the mid-90s, I loved working with the staff and community as a Campbell Planning Commissioner. I was conscious not only of how projects fit into the neighborhood, but also how they created the environment for the city itself. I've just completed 8 years on the Campbell City Council. My branding was the California license plate. It's very successful. It was very recognizable. I wanted to extend my commitment to the community in a decision-making capacity. As a council member, there were great opportunities, including an appointment to the executive board of the Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG. That's where I learned about legislative process requiring, which would require another long wine meeting to hear all the details. Too much for now. In 2016, I became a founding board member of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. I take great pride in participating in this next aspect of addressing climate change. I say pride because my knowledge and training as an architect enabled me to contribute to the growth of Silicon Valley Clean Energy and the success in reducing greenhouse gases by more than 35%. Considering, listening, learning a great deal about power generation and commodities market. Unbelievable. I contribute to decision-making because I think around corners. I understand schedules, risk, finance, entitlements, regulations, and communication. The strategic plan for the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, prepared by the staff, but informed with people like myself, include mobility, built environment, power supply, integrating for an energy efficient and grid integration. The connection with architecture is an opportunity I couldn't resist. So my professional story here is one of opportunities, recognizing opportunities to use how I think.
My name is Kao. Born and raised in Taipei, Taiwan, and came to United States about 8 years ago. Yeah, I just had my 8-year anniversary not too long ago. And I was trained as an architect for 5 years in Taiwan, received my Bachelor of Architecture from Taiwan University. And I was always that kid that, you know, like very hands-on. And then professor didn't really quite like me and not good at drawings and things. I was always that characteristic one that like to make model and then like to get my hands dirty, my whole body dirty, everything needs to be, yeah. So I kind of know very early on that I don't really fit in office settings, although that was kind of a default path to offer to most of the architecture students. And most of my classmates went to architecture studio after graduation. I did too. I tried about 2 years in the office, some medium firm, and one is like a smaller size firm, and realized, yeah, okay, it's not for me. So there was this one day I was kind of just searching. I was like, okay, what else I can do? I always love doing machining stuff and critical thinking. So I worked for UC Berkeley in their architecture lab for a little while, helping students to understand how to use 3D printers, laser cutters, and things. That was really a very interesting job, but that also opens up this opportunity of like, okay, there's something out there that's not just going to architecture office. There was one day I was searching of like, okay, let's push this a little further. During the 2 years when I work in the architecture studio, I found out this problem that I noticed this problem of like, we spend a whole bunch of time designing this, drawing this, planning this, but at the end, what happens in the field, it was always a little different from what the original design was. I don't know why it get there, how it get there, why does the original design cannot be realized? What was really the problem there? So I wanted to go to the other far end of how does the things was actually being made. What was the compromise there that drive the decision to work something that, you know, talking about buildability, material, other concern, and I wanted to get closer to that side. So I found this company one in San Francisco. And then they weren't hiring at the time. I just shoot them an email saying, hey, check out my resume. And then I got hired in the very beginning. They didn't really know what to do with me because I'm this weird one that comes from a total different background. Most of the fabricators work there are coming from sculpture background, industrial design. I'm the only one that's there having an architecture background. It turned out to be a very beneficial for both sides of us, the company-wise, and to me. I get the chance to learn a lot working tightly with the fabricators and installers that I know what they are thinking. And on the company's end, they get to see the architecture side, what happens when you are doing the original planning, what was the concern that drives the whole design. So it's been a very interesting and fun journey so far, and yeah, I'm very excited. And I recently just completed a lot of some public art outside that also push another boundary of like, now I am in this a little bit undefined role, working with the artists, working with the city, but coming from having a little architecture background and working for a fabricator. So I'm kind of get to know a little bit of everything and everybody who are being part of the project. So well, that's my journey so far, and I'm very excited to keep continuing this. So
my name is Navy Sutherland. I was thinking back on how I was gonna do my bio, and I think it really starts at a young age where I always wanted to be part of the built environment. I've known that from the very onset. I didn't know how, I didn't know why. It felt like in high school, I was drawn towards drafting and art class, and I just thought architecture was the path for me. And I don't think you end up at Cal Poly Architecture School unless you really want to be a part of the built environment. And I really thought that that was the path for me. I spent 2 years in architecture at Cal Poly, and I had a really smart professor take me aside one day after a project in one of the classes. And it was a project where every other student in the class had reiterated that project a couple of times. I thought my first version of my project was pretty great. And he did give me an A. And he said, why didn't you stay all night and all weekend working on this and iterating it to make it even better? And I said, well, I thought this first one was pretty good. I think I'm good. I belong here. So I switched to structural engineering, graduated structural engineering, ended up getting an internship for a general contractor in the Bay Area, kind of my last summer before I graduated. And I'll never forget, I walked into the trailer the first day, and there's a senior PM there in his office. Most of you guys know how the trailers are set up. Anyway, so I walked into his office, introduced myself. He's like, have you ever swung a hammer before? I was like, wow, I have, and I run farm equipment too. And he was kind of taken aback, but that was my first relationship with construction. But I fell in love with construction that summer. Every day you're on the job site, you're solving problems. One day you might be in an OAC with someone wearing a suit and a tie that you're trying to convince and run a change order over, and the next day you might be in the field working, are great at their craft and love working with their hands. And that dichotomy of the people that I interact with every single day made me fall in love with construction and even more with the environment. So I spent my first 5 years in construction with Excel Construction and switched over to GCI. I was really hoping to make a bigger impact. I found that construction can be risky and feel overwhelming to people and cause raised emotions. And I've spent my whole career finding it to be fun and exciting and an enjoyable experience. And there's nothing better than at the end of the project when my clients say that was the most enjoyable project I've ever worked on. That is what I'm striving to do every single day at GCI. In 2017, I was offered ownership at GCI. I think it's because I said yes to some hard tasks that they had. There was a task to open up an office that was the path to opening up that office looked a little harsh, and they offered it to another person in my firm, and that gentleman said no. I said yes, I'll drive farther, I'll open this office. And that really opened up a lot of doors for me at GCI. And since 2017, I've been part of, making decisions in the room on where the company's heading, increasing diversity and having my voice heard. And yeah, I'm excited for my next 20 years, making an impact in the Bay Area.
I'm Lance, and I'm Letitia. I hope that my story is just as exciting as other panelists. So let me kind of try to start. I became really interested in architecture even as a kid. My dad was an architect. My uncle was an urban designer. My another uncle was also an architect. So there's no way of escaping the exposure to this kind of profession and all. And I remember as a child, as I walked through the offices and, seeing all the blueprints, smelling all the ammonia and seeing all the models, it's kind of amazing. How do you turn this little model into a building? That was really fascinating. So that kind of sealed the deal for me. So over the years, I kind of steer away a little bit from architecture, did some art direction, work for a photographer, just try out different things. But eventually I came back around to study architecture because it's just sort of in my vein and in my DNA. It's like, God, there's no escaping. So I went to SCI-Arc for my graduate degree in architecture. So SciArc is a very sort of design-oriented school. So I thought in the beginning, I'm gonna be a designer, I'm gonna work for Frank Gehry, I'm gonna work for, Morphosis and things like that. So after interviewing with those firms, I'm like, you get paid for that much for a summer? So I recall actually turning down a couple of internships because I just couldn't really make a living with that stipend. And I'm really against, exploiting labor. And, I think everyone should be compensated fairly. So actually from that point, I actually had a principal call me up and said, how dare you turn down an internship? So knowing that back in late 1990s, it was like $900 for 3 months. I just could not look at that stipend. And she called me and said, hey, how dare you turn down an internship? I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't work for that. And besides, I respect you offering me a job, but that's not the way I want to go. So after my graduation, I actually went on to work for larger firms, and I believe I got compensated fairly. I did a good job. So for a number of years, I worked for conventional architectural firms, working on cafes, office buildings, labs, high-rise buildings, market housing, a variety of stuff. And I really, really enjoyed it. And part of it, the experience was, as I kind of move up the ladder a little bit, actually some people made a comment on maybe they're jealous, maybe there's a personality thing, they kind of pinpointed me. So I got a note on my desk one day. That person said, you're too friendly, you smile too much, that's not professional. And I was kind of like, wow. Is it really a trait of architects? You have to be serious all the time. You don't have to smile. So at that time, I was a job captain. So I was a job captain. I organized drawings. I organized teams and consultants. And I got a comment that I'm not serious enough. But I did my job. I actually finished my task early, and I could actually go home early. But maybe people were just, I don't know. This is a very strange comment. So to this day, that kind of comment and trait actually carry on with me, because as I move up and move on to other firms, people say, you're very effective and you're very friendly. How do you do it? So that was kind of interesting. And I really didn't know that was kind of part of my kind of makeup. So that in turn kind of helped me along the way to actually explore different paths. Then a little bit later on, opportunities came up with actually alternate paths, kind of away from architecture, just because I came off as a friendly person and they believe I could do the job. So I was offered an opportunity to go into sustainability. So that was mid 2000s when LEED was sort of kind of new and everything. And I remember dealing with a LEED version 2.0, actually 1.0. I worked on one project on paper. There was a binder with lots of paperwork. So I started with LEED 1.0, then moving on to LEED 2.0, then at that time it was online. So actually at that time, I started to carve up a different career path, sort of away from architecture, and I went into sustainability consulting at that time. During the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s. And it went on for a while. And because of my expertise, I also got invited to talks. I also got invited by West Valley College on an internship program. And actually, I think Emery, yeah. So, hey, we were internship program. So I was in the internship program as an advisor because I had like quite a few LEED projects under the belt already. So yeah, so that was also kind of a branch off the architecture. So at that time, it was sort of a little bit away from architecture, but I never really shied away from architecture. Then after that, I got a call one day actually and said, hey, you're really good at what you're doing. And I realized you actually recently quit your job. Would you like to teach? there's a position at the Academy of Art University. You could run an architectural studio. I said, hey, I have no experience in teaching, but I could talk. So I took on the job, and it was a very good experience. I did that for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. And I taught part-time about 20 hours a week. I also ran my own practice doing single-family residential and small TI projects. And then also on the side, I did lead training. So all of that was really good. It went on for a while. Then one day I got a call, and then it was a friend of mine who used to work with me, and he said, hey, I have a perfect position for you. Do you want to just shy away from teaching? Do you want a full-time job? I said, no, why would I want a full-time job? And he said, you don't understand. This is a perfect position for you. It's on sustainability. It has a lot of sort of bells and whistles that you would really love to learn and acquire. So it was a pretty interesting position, director of sustainability at an MEP engineering firm called Alphaton. And they did a lot of really interesting high-profile projects, really out-of-the-box thinking. So I was the director of sustainability there. I did a lot of kind of managing projects. So I have 2 direct reports that did solely lead projects, like lead paperwork. And I also led a group doing actually custom energy modeling. So on sort of these really out-of-the-box buildings, you really need early energy model studying on energy generating high performance facades, what happens to naturally ventilated buildings, how much, kind of energy do you need? What if you do a radiant kind of ceiling or a radiant glass slab, concrete slab, and all of that. So I learned a lot by involving in this projects, doing really interesting energy studies. So that is something that I thought I would never do. Why would I go and do MEP? But by collaborating with engineers and doing all these advanced studies was very beneficial. And I think wearing that architect's hat to get some input into actually the engineer's mind, because all they care about was kind of numbers. And what I care about is about how it looked and how it will perform, due to geometry and orientation and siting and everything. So that was a pretty good combination. Yeah, so then after that, I know it just kind of went on and on. And I felt that at that time I was like further kind of a little bit away from kind of traditional architecture, but I was never away from architecture because I was always working with architects along the way. Then about 4 years ago, I got a call again by a friend and said, hey, there's the owner side. Would you like to get an interview? I was like, why would I want to go to the owner side? And I was like, no, just whatever. 3 months later, they called me back. Would you like to come? So I began to think about there's another sort of opportunity and also about another kind of aspect of things I haven't learned. So I think every job change that I have, there's that core competency that I have and a core kind of personality that I project, that I was being friendly, I'm friendly and proficient in what I do. And that came off as probably a very positive aspect. So I would get a call every time, and every job is, I would satisfy about 75% core competency, but 25% I would have to, whether it's advanced energy modeling, whether it's MEP, advanced system, radiant cooling, heating, naturally ventilated facades with like automated facade openings, all that stuff. I didn't know before, and I didn't know how to manage MEP project managers or MEP project, engineers. That was a pretty interesting match, an architect managing engineers. But I was successful, and it was a good experience. So I went on to the owner side about 4 years ago. Again, it's about that 25%. that I have not been exposed and I have not learned it. But I'm always a very curious person. I'm always wanting to learn. I always want to kind of need to know more and understand more about the other side of things. So the other side came up as really kind of an interesting kind of sphere for me. Just like Paula said, just like Marty said, there is a lot of stakeholders and things that kind of have to play out to inform this decision making. Why do things take so long? Why is it so complicated? Why do things have to change all the time? And now I know what. So if you ask me what is my next step, I think I'm never away from architecture. I love being an architect. I still identify myself as an architect, and I wouldn't really kind of rule out that I would go back to architecture, but I would probably come in with a different perspective. I think I would come back with a different kind of insight on how to run an architecture practice, knowing that there's something else out there that could inform the decision. I also understand how architects should contribute in a bigger picture. So I think that would be my next step, but I don't know what exactly it is yet. I know that it'll be around and it'll be in architecture. So that's my story.
Sounds like you're waiting for another phone call. All right, if there are any questions, we can collect those. And then I had a couple questions that I was gonna start us off with. And let's check the time check. Okay, we have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to maybe only ask one question each, just in case there are questions from the audience. I'm gonna start with Hal. How has being a woman impacted your alternate path, and what unique characteristics do women bring into your design role?
This is the only question that I was like, when we were prepping, that was struggling to answer this question. I was gonna say, oh, okay, woman, so like, I'm this little tiny Asian, I go to job site, I'm one of the only women that's on the construction field, I can act like a team player, I get a little soft energy and stuff, but that's the very default question, the very default answer. So later on, when I started thinking, yeah, it's actually like, talking about the topic today is beyond architecture. I also want to say this is a kind of a little beyond gender question too. I think it's more important that there's a stereotype of what a woman can be in the construction side or in the architecture firm. There's a stereotype of what a male could be in the construction side and in the architecture firm. It's more important to find out what your own character really is and work with that character. Either you're a woman, identify yourself as a woman or as a man, or vice versa. But really knowing and understand who you as an individual person and what can you bring to the team is what the crucial things is. So yeah.
All right, so staying for Haley.
For this one, but I thought I was getting a different one, but I love this one. You know, women, being a woman in construction, I think has energized me. I think bringing a great leader, as Simon Sinek says, is bringing empathy and perspective to the role as a leader. And I think women do that naturally in their day-to-day business. And what bigger impact can you have than being a woman in a male-dominated industry, bringing empathy and bringing perspective and sitting at the table and adding value? And I really do think that that's a downstream effect to all of our employees and all of our clients to give them a better product. So, I'm pro it.
And same for Liz.
Same to me. So I'm a generation older,
and my experience about being a woman in the profession, is somewhat different. When I started, it was, and I worked in an architectural office, it was expected I would type the specifications. I truth be known, I did not know how to type. I deliberately did not know how to type. So that job assignment didn't go forward. Many things have changed. Women, my experience is I went to graduate school, 50% of the class were women, which left about, say, 22 or so women in the class. Only 4 got registered ultimately. So people became photographers, people went into interior design. No one I know went into construction or fabrication. So the environment has changed in a very positive way. I think I think the comments that you heard this evening really talk a lot about how our training and really love of the profession of architecture informs how we live our lives, do our jobs, the pleasure we have for ourselves and the people that we work with and our clients. I think it's marvelous. And it basically, for me, if I tried to summarize it, is the profession and our love of it has allowed us to be ourselves in what we say and do. We don't quite so much, at least for me, gendify what it is that we do and the environments we accept the world and just focus on what we love to do and what we need to do. So that's how I would say. Thank you.
So we have a question for Letitia in advance. What is beyond the architect being a service provider? Architects as stakeholders, you mentioned it a little bit, but just follow up.
I know we had that question and I didn't think you would ask that question.
I'm surprised.
I kind of want to stress that actually, like I'm sort of inspired by the responses here. I want to chime in on the gender discussion. I always see myself, I'm identified as a woman and I'm a woman and I'm a professional. But I never identify myself as a woman professional. Because in my mind, being professional is a profession. That you are recognized by your, ability to lead, ability to collaborate, and ability to communicate. So I think if there's ever a comment or kind of an issue based on gender, I would just say, hey, I'm a professional. Let's discuss what is, what the issue is related to the job itself, but not the gender. But I personally have not really encountered that kind of comment as a woman professional. I would say that my team is about 80% men and 20% women. That's a senior project manager role. But we have always been very collaborative and respectful, whether it's the men and women. So to get back to that question about being a service provider, just like I wanted you to learn that architects are much more capable than being a service provider, meaning doing drawings and project manage, really on the just delivering a package for current drawings that follow through with construction. I think we are trained so comprehensively on critical thinking and communication and presentation on all aspects of skills. And coupled with your personality skills and ability to communicate, I think as a profession, we could do so much more. And I envision we could really get involved in kind of master planning, in strategy building, whether it's at a company level, community level, or kind of world global level. That our input is very much needed in all aspects of every industry. It's medical science, in physical environment, energy, and everything. I think we could bring so much on the table. So I would encourage every professional here just expand and think out of the box and see how we can contribute as a profession.
Thank you. And we have one last question on a prepared question for Liz about how architects get engaged to make a difference for the community built environment.
So I think I gave you a little bit of a storyline that told you how I ended up in the political arena. It was not intentional, never planned. It just became something that made sense. It was an opportunity to contribute in the bigger picture, to help really how we think, some people that I deal with, it's hard to say. I always say I'm an architect. I think differently. I think for the big picture, the client, the city, you're not doing this for yourself. It's always looking for the big picture. And I really found that being on the planning commission was just a blast. I really encourage you to join any of the community at all levels of the commissions. It's without any pay, almost thankless, but it is fun. And people then ask me to run for council. I mean, that's basically what happened. And it's a very demanding commitment, being an elected official. I was mayor during COVID, which was not fun. It's an important function, and I really genuinely believe that our training makes us able to contribute to the political dialogue, our communication skills, our broad knowledge, our openness, our lateral thinking. So to me, we can contribute tremendously at any level in the political dialogue. And I would encourage all of you to consider any and all opportunities.
Do we have any questions from the audience? No, I don't think anyone wrote anything down. I was trying to look to see if anyone was feverishly writing down beside myself. How much time do we have?
That was great. Have fun.
There's one.
Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of being exactly where you are in relationship to architecture? Like what frustrates you and what's fun?
Yes. I'll give a quick answer because I get this question all the time myself as well. I think one of the pros is the diversity. So working at a university, it's been much more diverse than it ever was working in an architectural firm. The con is a little bit lack of creativity. So I do miss that. It's a little bit more hierarchical at a university. So I kind of miss like the creative aspect. There's creativity in problem solving, but it's not quite the same as designing because we hand off our projects to architects. Being on this side, now it gets handed off to others. So it's like, you wanted to offer a solution. But what I say carries more weight now than it did before. So that's how I'll wrap it up.
So I think in the world of politics, and I'll give a little bit of a pep speech. Architects really can contribute to good political discourse and decision making. Politicians write legislation that's black and white words on paper. They don't understand what those words transcribe, particularly in the environment. So I think we need to have, as a profession, more acknowledgement and respect in the public arena, because we add tremendous value. We have to find the avenues to contribute those on the highest level of decision making, which is politics.
The pros and cons of from the fabrication world is kind of the same thing, because you need to build the things and it's physically there. So if it cannot be built, you draw all those drawings, you talk to the fabricator, metal fabricator, you put it down, you go to the construction site. Oh shit. So that's the cons. The pros is it's super fun. It's to me, it's the ultimate satisfaction that you see of things being built in front of you, not just like drawing and then a couple months later and then you visit site a couple of times and then you get it. You go to site every single day, you see coming up. So That's like the pros to me.
I think your question is extremely personal and that my pros would be different than your pros and same with my cons. As I say, find your voice, find what you are drawn to, find the people that you think you can connect with and inspired by and follow that path. You hear all of us were driven by the built environment. I think 5 of us. And we were moving in the paths because we were listening to fate or drawn by the people or whatnot. And so that would be my suggestion to you, is just that like pros and cons of whatever you experience.
I have nothing furthermore to add. Response is very similar to mine, is about the kind of offhand aspect that, okay, is actually the architect doing all the designing, and even though I wore that hat before, I would like to chime in and change these things, but no, I have to respect the architect as the, really the solution provider of the solution, problem solver, solution provider, and let them have the agency and authorship. As part of the project. So that was kind of the hard part because I am at heart an architect. The pro is that, yeah, get exposure to so much more on the owner side and what kind of the various forces that's driving the project. So that is really hugely interesting and satisfying.
Awesome. I think we're at time. Is there anything else that anyone wants to ask? I really want to respect our hosts and you have one more.
So
Yes.
So like, I've been in profession for many years, on many different sides, which I really like, so I like doing this as well. I also have to teach part-time now. I see dramatic changes happening, that there are far less architects, that is, clients don't want to deal so much with architects, much more interest in the interior design side, or maybe more of the design and construction as they call it. So I'm just curious if any of you have had those either pressures or observations in your jobs.
Maybe not wanting to deal with
Other than interior designers, for example, because you have to have the interiors, but you don't necessarily need the engineers, you know, design drawings and so on.
I see. Well, for my world at Google, actually, Google as a company deeply respects professionals. So they really hold architects in high regard. So they wouldn't hire anything but the best. And for that is the architects and good interior designers. So my experience is a little bit different from your observation, because I'm exposed to it. But knowing that there might be some other kind of companies and organizations that might have us in their.
Yeah, I would say the same. As I mentioned, we still hire architects and engineers. We have to deal with agencies, with jurisdictions, with county approval, with OSHPA or HCI. There's enough jurisdictions that need approval that we still have to go through. So we're not veering from that, and at least the work that I see.
Yeah, the work that we're seeing, you need an architect professional to sign the drawings and get them permanent or not, but on that design build side, I would say we're continuing to listen to our clients and help them make the right decision in the team that they're putting together. And so if the schedule is, or if the project is schedule driven, we might recommend an MEP design approach. If we're on really early, we might recommend an architect to work with that fits their personality and their style of build out. And so you can help your clients make the right decisions, because usually they are the novices. They haven't done it for 10 years. They're trying to find the right space, and we really are there to help guide them and help them make the right decisions.
So I'm going to do one last thing and give you maybe one word, if you would, to describe that. Oh, okay. So prepare yourselves for a one-word answer.
This question is from Jason. Jason Hola, he said if you were to think about one item that would have kept you in the traditional path, what might that have been?
The economy, it's hit me 4 or 5 different times over my career.
Is the question more of like, I didn't really get the.
What would have kept you on that traditional?
Oh, what would-
Yeah, like what's like the changing moment that
changes to, I think it's like the ultimate creativity side of it, because we are oftentimes in this very beginning, early on conceptual drawing, and it really, the ceiling is really as high as you can imagine. And then you get to be the person who first bring it out from the imagination to the drawing, and that is very exciting.
I do kind of hope to go back to it in one capacity or another post-retirement. I think you really need to flip homes, and I think I bring a lot of value from construction and architecture background. And so, yeah, I just think it never leaves you.
And I think I mentioned my kind of idea in my return to architecture is about actually running an architectural practice more efficiently and exploring different avenues of running the business of architecture. I think currently the practice is a little bit narrow. So yeah, I never know. I might return to architecture if, anyone is going to do new ideas of practice. You know what I mean? But I'm not saying that I'm doing that now.
What would have kept me in a traditional role would have been if I had been licensed architect, which I'm not. So I had to find alternate means because I don't fit the rules, because I'm not licensed. All right, I'm just going to end with one word, and I would like you each to think of one word that describes how you see the future. Based on everything we talked about today. I'm going to pick the word hopeful. Opportunities.
Okay. Resilient.
Diversify.